Coach, as we said, was saying a lot, man, as he talked a lot about his team and preparation, obviously being without one of their superstars in Mason Smith and getting ready here for this rematch. And this, Stewie, is number one here of Brian Kelly yesterday speaking at the podium and first-time game week and talking about the opportunity that they have this week going up against Florida State.
Another college football season is upon us, and we certainly have picked a great matchup. LSU and Florida State, top 10 matchup in week one, and we knew that this day would be coming. It's the only game on Sunday on ABC. It's just a great challenge for our football team, and they've been looking forward to this challenge. It's what motivates you in the off season. All the things that you do to prepare for a great game like this all comes to fruition on Sunday.
You know, the big storyline here in year two for Brian Kelly and LSU has really been about getting consistent, right? Being able to work through the things that they had to install last year, like practice methods and how you handled yourself on and off the field, just the expectation of being an LSU football player in the direction, under the direction of Brian Kelly. A lot of that stuff now is understood and built into the program. Now here in year two, it's about building consistency. Here's what Brian Kelly said he has seen from his group as they've tried to build that consistent model here in year two.
Where we've improved from last year is just overall, we're a smarter football team. We understand the systems, we understand the process, we understand the things necessary to become more consistent in everything that we do to be a championship football team.
That to me is, that's one of the advantages, obviously, that LSU has going into this matchup compared to last season, was you were just so curious about what they were going to look like, what the team was going to play like, how they were going to, what the even pregame routine is for a lot of these guys and the team was still, people were curious on what it was going to be like. Now you've got so much better of an understanding of who you are, and with Kelly in year two, just really an advantage for both teams. But year two with Brian Kelly, obviously he's the newer coach. Mike Norvell was, he was more on the hot seat than anything last season, while Kelly was making his debut in this matchup. So from Brian Kelly's standpoint, a year later, much more confident and consistent in the preparation has really put him in a good spot. Here is Kelly talking about that preparation and what he's made of LSU going into this game.
We've made improvements in the technical development of our football team, the tactical development. Physically, we're better. I think mentally, we're better as a football team. Now you got to go out and execute. And so, we've been preparing since the last game we've played, and now we'll see what this team does when it comes time to perform. I have no idea. I know they've prepared really well, and my experience tells me that teams that prepare well, when they flip the switch to performance, that they can and will perform well.
What an anxious time for a coach. Like, things that we take for granted, times we take for granted, and you just show up and expect on Sunday the team is going to perform, players are going to make plays, high-end guys are going to be in the end zone. You'll see Harold Perkins behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, everything that you expect, you just show up and think that happens, right? I mean, even guys like Kelly, who, you're in it, you're around it, you're sleeping it, you're breathing it, you're eating. I mean, it's every day. And you still, in this time period where it's game week, you're going through it, you're getting ready to go, you're getting ready to play, you still have no idea, right? Like, what it's going to look like, what it's going to play out like, and it's just got to be a very anxious time for a coach, especially in a situation where, like we've said, I get the feeling, and I've said this around people who are covering the team, and I've heard people kind of nod in agreement of, you get a sense that Kelly really believes that they're good. You know, watch your mic, Stewie. That they have a real chance to be a player in the SEC. So, I mean, this time period has to be, you know, I mean, minutes have to go by like hours, right? On getting to Sunday. You just want to, you want to know. You want to know what you got. You want to know what it looks like. You want to know if Deshaun Walmack can play at this level. You want to know if Emory Jones is going to be able to hold up for 4 quarters against Jared Verse, right? What a matchup that's going to be against LSU's tackles and Will Campbell and Jones, and if they maybe decide to throw Lance Hurd in this weekend for a series. I mean, you think that Verse is going to smell blood in the water if Lance Hurd is playing right tackle this week? How confident is LSU in Lance Hurd when they look across the line of scrimmage and Verse is, you know, just licking his chops waiting to get after a couple of these younger guys? What a test for Jones. What a test for Campbell. What a debut for Lance Hurd if in fact he does get his number called on Sunday. Kelly was talking a little bit about that, you know, about Jared Verse and about what this defense, you know, the challenges that they bring when you're talking about this Florida State team. But here he is talking about the quarterback matchup between Travis Rogers and Jaden Daniels going into this game.
Jordan Travis.
I'm sorry, yes, Jordan Travis.
Jordan Travis and Jaden Daniels, I mean, two great quarterbacks, two elite quarterbacks that can make things happen. Jalen and Jordan, two guys that can run, can throw,
almost got BK.
Elusive.
A little Jalen in
Yeah,
there for
I
Jaden Daniels,
almost felt it. He slipped on Aaron Anderson yesterday.
What did he say?
When they asked him about punt returner and they asked him about kick returner, he went in and said, it was like Caleb Jackson is going to be the field guy. And you could see it happening. Like you could see in the moment, especially somebody like that, you know, when you speak and you're like fishing and you're trying to remember something and some of the tactics that you use, I could like feel it 9 rows up, like just like, oh man, he's pulling because he had like the press packet in front of him, and like the question was direct, and like he fired back. He was like, well, we're gonna have freshman Caleb Jackson back there as the front guy, and I'm gonna have another big time playmaker back there ready to catch punts. A guy that's been just a big playmaker, and you see him like digging. He's like a playmaker that is just, we can't wait to watch him make plays back there. And I mean, finally he's like, what's my guy's name? He looks at, and somebody from the top, I think it's one of the New Orleans, I think it might have been Garland Gillum, was like, Aaron Anderson? He was like, Aaron Anderson. He was like, man, how could I forget that guy's name? He's such a playmaker. But I mean, like, yes.
It'll get you, Coach.
Yeah, it'll get you, man. I mean, when you slip on it, it's tough to watch. But here he is talking about that. Stewie, this is number, I was just looking at it, on number 12. This is BK talking about special teams, and what does he expect there?
You know, we're going to go with a true freshman and Caleb Jackson as the off returner. You know, I think, you know, having, you know, a dynamic player at the other side. Who am I missing? Who's my dynamic player? Yeah, Aaron. He's pretty dynamic. He'll be the on-ball returner and our punt returner. It's just a different look back there. Now, they got to field the ball. They've got to be able to do the little things the right way. But from a special team standpoint, you know, that's what we were looking for. Our miscues last year were evident, right? We didn't field the ball very well. But that coupled with, you know, Damon Ramos has been outstanding, you know, with field goals throughout camp. And Jay Bramlett has been a weapon. We think special teams should and can be a positive for us and influence games.
That was Kelly talking about the special teams and who to expect. I love Caleb Jackson back there.
I know.
I mean, like,
Don't let him get on the
okay.
field.
Like, I didn't know that it was going to be like this.
Yeah.
Game 1?
No red shirt for Caleb Jackson.
I
this
mean,
year,
like,
huh?
at some point, you got to believe they're going to be like, stop kicking it to Aaron Anderson.
And then
And, like, just kick it up and let's see what this
Kick it
guy
to the
28's
freshman.
like. Let him catch a seam.
yeah. Okay.
Or come running down on a punt team, like running straight up, like just kind of tiptoeing down there and see if you can't like catch him.
Try to big hit on him.
All right, here's Kelly talking about the defensive playmakers in this game. We talked a little bit about Verse for Florida State. He is an absolute animal for the Noles, but obviously lurking for the Tigers is going to be number 4, Harold Perkins.
On the defensive side of the ball, Harold Perkins, Jared Verse, you're going to see 2 elite defensive players. So it's exciting playmakers.
Quick bite.
Yeah. I guess Lloyd was.
I mean, what is it? What are these bites from Lloyd?
Well, I don't-
I mean, he cuts them off before any of the information comes in. Replay that bite. I mean, did my son Jordan cut this up?
On the
He's
defensive side of the
12.
ball, Harold Perkins, Jared Verse, you're going to see 2 elite defensive players. So it's exciting playmakers.
These things are kind of difficult to cut. I don't know if you were there yesterday.
I was.
But sometimes, like, the media will cut them off.
I hear
So
you, but
gotta,
let it
like-
breathe. Give me some info. I mean, like, Jared Verse, Harold Perkins, 2 of the dynamic players. Yeah, no. Tell me about them.
And he's about to.
Right. I mean, he's like
Just
about to dive into it.
Just didn't get
and
to
Lloyd
it.
cuts it off. Play these bites like down the line. Let's see if we've got any information here. This guy, Lloyd,
This is number 6.
then sends a text that he's got car trouble this morning. Dog
You're going
ate
to
my
see 2
homework.
football teams that want to be physical at the point of attack. 2 teams that want to run the football and can run the football. So, you might be looking at 2 teams that mirror each other in a lot of ways.
That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. What number was that?
That was number 6.
Okay. He can't screw this one up. This was BK talking about the injury report.
And the great part about it is, we're going to be very healthy from that perspective. When we announced, a month or so ago about injuries, we told you we'd let you know, what that looked like. And so, we've got 3 guys on the injury list. Amani Goodwin will be listed as doubtful. Chemo will be listed as questionable, and Josh will be listed as probable, Josh Williams. So 3 guys on the injury list, and we'll have 1 player unavailable to us, and that's Mason Smith. So, and I think that Mason's situation has been addressed.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's BS.
Bullshit. Sorry, kids.
Here is more from BK yesterday talking, Stewie, this is 11, him talking about the running back room.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good question. I mean, we've been trying to get the running back rotation down. As you know, we've had a number of running backs that have been in and out of the lineup. We mentioned Josh is in a really good position. Amani is not. And other guys have been fighting to get back to full strength, which we are. So trying to get consistency at the running back position, which we think we are getting there. I think the biggest improvement has been the ability of our offensive line to gain the continuity up front, having 5 guys working together consistently. And then the ability to adjust after the snap. As you know, this game is played after the snap. There's so much moving. There's so much stemming. The ability to communicate and do the things necessary after the snap, we're so much further along than we were at any time last year. And so that's encouraging moving forward.
Here is more from Brian Kelly speaking yesterday to the media, opening game week as the Tigers and Seminoles are going to play coming up here on Friday night, on Sunday night. Here is Kelly talking. This is 9 talking about Mekhi Wingo getting number 18.
We have a history and tradition of awarding jerseys within the program. The number 18 jersey, which signifies and exemplifies the character traits necessary for that person to wear 18. He's got to have the leadership capabilities. He's got to represent incredible traits and somebody that really is going to wear that jersey both on and off the field and representing LSU football. And that number 18 went to Mekhi Wingo. I'm really proud of him.
Wingo, of course, going to be the marquee player on the defensive line this week with no Mason Smith, as Wingo really stepped into a role similar to the situation that he's being placed into on Saturday. Now, look, he's a starter this year. He's not battling for a starting job or to get on the field. He's a player that LSU is going to count on every Saturday. But obviously with Mason Smith out, a lot of the highlight, a lot of the attention for Florida State's offensive line is going to be featured on number 18 just because of his ability. So another Mekhi Wingo stepping into a real pressurized spot here coming up on Sunday night. This is 14, Stewie. This is Kelly talking about Sage Ryan, who's really been a top performer throughout camp. We told you early on that he was getting first-team reps at cornerback. We were nearly laughed off the set that morning when we brought up Sage Ryan, being somebody that could be a dynamic cornerback on this team. Now going into week 1, he is running as a first-team cornerback, and Kelly spoke a little bit why he's been a guy that they've been able to move around here going into the season.
Sage Ryan going to be available this week.
He's going to be versatile. He's fine. Had a, and again, I hate to use terms and with the appearance that I'm trying to make them seem less than they are, but it was a stinger, but it cleared up, and he was able to get back into practice the next day. But we are going to use him both at the nickel and corner position. So he's been cross-trained. A lot of the technical work has been at corner because he knows the nickel position really well. But he's one of our fastest players. He's typically in, when we're talking about GPS speed, he's typically in the high 21 range, and he's topped out at 22. So he can run. He's smart. But I think the thing that has separated him is his ability to tackle in space.
Which I thought.
So, he's going to play to the field. And I think he gives us some great flexibility.
Gotta have him.
A little extended cut there by Lloyd.
Gotta have him.
Wow. Must have fallen asleep on the Sage Ryan bite. But that was the most surprising part of the clip. I thought even sitting in the room yesterday was speaking about Ryan's tackling ability and being a for sure tackler, and the emphasis obviously that Matt House puts on that on all 11 guys. Man, you can hear it if you ever go out to practice on just how important the tackling role is. And you saw it even last week in week 0 of college football. There is a clear indicator, and Lil Jay and I were sitting there on Sunday night watching the Saints and Texans play. I mean, it takes a minute to get going on tackling now and watching football because they just don't do it anymore. I mean, like, you rarely see anybody go to the ground. Now, look, I know that some of these Saturday scrimmages are live and people are getting popped and people are getting wrapped up and taken to the ground and tackled. And, I know that is happening at LSU, but you got to it's happened 3 times now. They've had 3 scrimmages, 2 scrimmages,
2 or 3,
right? So I mean, like you're looking at a maximum of about 6 hours where you've been live and taken to the ground. I mean, you're about to step into a 3.5 hour game where it's going to be violent. I mean, people are going to be flying around. Everybody's healthy. Yeah. Everybody's 100%, right? I mean, people are going into this game and going to be flying around. And one of the biggest things that you see early on, at least I saw it last weekend, and for USC's sake, let's just hope that is the excuse, because their defense looked pathetic. I mean, but one of their biggest problems were, they couldn't get anybody to the ground.
think that's just USC's problem.
It could be, but you look around college football, I mean, even the Hawaii Vanderbilt game, I mean, a lot of people bouncing off, not being taken down to the ground on first tackle, first contact. You know, I mean, one of the things that obviously you go out to LSU, and it's a lot of emphasis on, you know, I mean, getting the ball to the ground. If you're first one to get to the ball, either hold it up, stop it, and get the, you know, work on getting it to the ground and wait on the cavalry to get there. But I mean, things that we do see early on in football season, whether it's college football. I mean, hell, I was out at a little league game on Saturday morning, and even hearing reports from high school fields on Friday night. I mean, it's still one of the things early on in the season that it just takes a minute to get accustomed to, because it really does. It's non-existent.
Yeah, in preseason for sure.
I mean, it really is. I mean, even on practice fields, you know, I mean, it's rare to see they call it thud.
Yeah.
Now, where, I mean, you want to run up,
run your feet a little bit.
Aggressive, you know, I mean, you want to bring kind of a punch, but nobody's going to the ground. Nobody's running up, wrapping up, and rolling to the ground and getting the ball to the ground, and there's a huge emphasis on that. And it's one of the things early on in the season that when you're watching the games and you see it does take a minute for defensively the tackling to catch up. Offensive line has been a piece that we have talked about a ton here on this show, and looking and reading around the buildup for this Florida State matchup between LSU. It is a highlighted position for LSU going into this game, and Brian Kelly really spells it out here in this last bite of what his offensive line looks, feels like compared to a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be much of a change. I think down the road, as we continue to move, you could see some movement within that top 6, 7. That's very reasonable to expect that there could be some movement there, and that's obviously from some of the freshmen that are coming on. DJ Chester is getting better every day. Obviously Hurd, we've talked about him. Those two guys in particular are making progress every single day. So those two with Martinez, Bordelon continues to improve every day. You've got 8 guys right there that we feel really comfortable about. Chemo's out right now. Hopefully we get him back for the game. He had plantar fasciitis, so we're hopeful. That's a painful thing for your foot, but he's better. But we like what's going on there, and so typically there wouldn't be much movement, but when you're dealing with freshmen, and part of where those 8 or 9 are, there's movement every single day with those guys.
I think he's trying to set up that he wants to play Lance Hurd at the beginning of that bite. And what I read into it was this stage, this game, this opening matchup, especially on the line of scrimmage for LSU in this matchup. Jared Verse is getting all of the attention. They have a transfer from Central Michigan who's going to be an issue as well on that defensive line.
Braden Fisk.
They also have the freshman defensive player of the year in the ACC as a defensive end on the other side of Verse. This is a defensive line from Florida State that is going to be maybe the toughest matchup of the season for LSU. And this is before you play an SEC game. There will be teams in the league that may be as good as Florida State, but I think LSU is going to be tough pressed to run into a team that is better than the group that Florida State's going to roll out here in week 1. I mean, it's September 3rd. These guys are fresh off the bus. I mean, they have an off-season worth of training, a training camp and fall camp worth of reps, and like we said, I'd imagine Florida State is a lot like other football programs around the country at every level, where it's not as physical as it used to be in training camp. You know, guys usually go into the season a lot fresher than they did in years past, especially around here, right? I mean, like there is a huge emphasis on keeping these guys as fresh, loose, and ready to play as possible. And with that, you lose a lot of the intensity of training camp. You lose a lot of the just the aggressive nature of the sport. So the first time you see it, you know, I mean, it's violent. And Sunday night is going to be a hell of a test for this offensive line that I have a ton of confidence in. You can feel around the program that the coaching staff, Brian Kelly, Brad Davis, Mike Denbrock, Frank Wilson, all have huge expectations for this offensive line. I mean, you look at the playmaking capability that they have on the line of scrimmage. I mean, you know, look no further than your left tackle wearing number 7 in his second year.
And you don't think he's excited about seeing Jared Verse again? Remember the first play of Florida State last season?
Absolutely. Stood him straight up, right? I mean, like.
So Will's been watching that all summer.
Moved him about 3 feet off the line of scrimmage. I mean, but I give Campbell credit. I mean,
he held his own.
He held up that night, right? And that was a hell of a test for him, right? I mean, even somebody as talented as Emory Jones, who stepped in about 3 weeks later and really played up to the standards of an offensive lineman in the league as a true freshman, it took him a minute, right? I mean, you have to think how that will affect Lance Hurd moving forward, right? If his first test is against potentially maybe the best defensive end in college football. I mean, right? I mean, he's probably going to be in the discussion of the first one taken off of the board in the NFL draft, and to me, that's my measuring stick, right? I mean, what's the NFL think about you? Oh, they think he's the best. Okay. Week 1. Right?
They thought he was a first-round pick last year.
So, you know, I mean, it's going to be a hell of a test for LSU up front. And you've got guys that now are a little bit more seasoned, but you also have that ornament of Lance Hurd, who they have fallen in love with in training camp. It's obvious that there is a big push to get him on the field. I even think that soundbite is kind of setting it up, right? Where he says, look, there's no movement right now, but down the line, it's open that, you know, 6 and 7 could be up for debate. I think what he's saying is number 6 right now is Lance Hurd, and at some point, they're going to have to shuffle him in. And I wonder if Sunday night is the stage to do it. Because, you know, on the flip of that, if he passes the test and goes in there and holds his own and is able to kind of build off of his first start, I mean, it's not going to be Neville, right? But it also is not Grambling. Hell, it's not even Mississippi State. So, you know, I mean, it's a great test. It is one that, from an offensive line standpoint, LSU, with as confident as they feel around the program, around the unit, even for people like us who cover the program and have watched this offensive line kind of build through recruiting and the transfer. But we don't talk about Mason Lunsford a lot. I wonder if he's going to play this weekend. I mean, when I hear 6 and 7, I hear Lance Hurd and Mason Lunsford. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the two names that would come. And he talks a lot about
DJ Chester.
Talks a lot about Chester, but he talks a lot about his name's slipping my mind, who he just said had the plantar fasciitis.
Kiko. I don't know how to say his last name. I'm not going to butcher it.
Yeah, right. I'm not even
it's
trying.
One of those,
I get Derek and David Carr screwed up.
Right. It's a Samoan last
like,
name.
Yeah.
Don't get me. Don't get me on this. But we have a Jetsetta in the chat, and he must be a Florida State fan.
A lot of Florida State fans.
He just said Keon Coleman came from Michigan State. Go do your research. I'm actually roommates with somebody who played high school football with Keon Coleman.
What are we talking about? Doing research on what? We haven't brought his name up.
Right. We know how good he is. Like, we know he's good. Like, we know Florida State has good receivers. We know Florida State's a good football team. Like, Florida State fans are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, here's the deal with Florida State fans.
It's been a while for them.
They have not been here in a long, long time. You're probably talking to a lot of sons, nephews, younger guys that kind of grew up watching their dads, their grandfathers, their older uncles kind of cheer for Florida State back in the 90s when they were the dominant. When I say dominant, I mean, I want to say that they spent 11 years in the top 5.
It was a while.
I mean, it was over a decade that they spent in the. I mean, when we were growing up as kids, we all had Florida State gear. In fact, I mean, a lot of their pipeline of running backs
Came from Louisiana.
not only Louisiana, from Baton Rouge. I mean, you had Warwick Dunn into Travis Minor that were 2 freshman starters at Florida State in their prime. I think Travis Minor played 4 years at Florida State, and all 4 years he went to the national championship. I mean, just to kind of give you an idea of how dominant they were, right? But now, I mean, it has been such a long time since they have been relevant. I mean, you can hear the crying of that through people like Danny Cannell, right, who is a former quarterback of Florida State, who I kind of view as a spokesperson of not only the ACC, but kind of the Florida State fan base. And think about every time Cannell opens his mouth. I mean, he sounds like such a weak crybaby.
He sounds like he wants to
pity
cry.
party. Look it up, you know what I mean? And when I see Florida State, I get that same feeling, especially from a lot of the comments that they leave in the chat. It's a lot of insecurity. It's a lot of little man syndrome, and coming from a 5'9" Italian, that's a stinger. You know what I mean? It's a lot of, and I know that you claim and you reside on the win last year, and it was a win. You got the win, right? But if you look at the second half of that game and you don't see the train like moving down the tracks, that, I mean, you were just kind of running out of time on that. It does this matchup is a huge game for both sides. But let's be real. I mean, LSU definitely has much more experience in these moments, has much more experience of being a relevant brand in the 2000s, the 20-teens, and even through the 2020s. Florida State is kind of trying to make their way back to the party. They're flashing their card and showing you their BCS ball, the crystal ball, where it's like, hey, let us in. We were cool in the 90s. It's like, yeah, I know. But, you know, grandpa and uncle and dad go home. I guess you can send the nephews and the kids in for a little bit.
Kids
right?
been doing the Noel.
Right. I mean, you've been doing the chomp since he's been in his crib, right? And, you know, things were cool back then before he could walk. You know what I mean? But now, you know, since he's moved off the bottle and the pacifier, Florida State hadn't done anything for 20 years.
2015 is a long time ago, Coach.
Right? I mean, so now back here, it's good to have you back. College football is a better place when you're relevant. I would just say, just kind of chill out, bro. You're freaking everybody out. Like, you're running all the girls away. You're trying to change the music. I mean, the party is cool. We're all having a good time. We've been here for a while, though.
Just vibe, though.
Just chill. Just chill. Like, you're good. You're good. It's
we get it.
It's a big moment for you on Sunday. LSU's been in these moments countless times over the last decade.
We know the hot girl wants to talk
mean?
to you.
Sometimes you win SEC championships. Sometimes you win natties. Right? I mean, for you, it's just about playing this Labor Day game against LSU that you're freaking out about. Like, it's a big game. It's a big game.